For many millennia, heroes have played a crucial role in human cultures and societies. Sometimes mythological, sometimes legendary, and sometimes real. These figures reflect the practices, ideas, values, interests, and concerns of the people they arise from, and are honored by those people through the traditions that are passed down from generation to generation. Heracles' 12 labors, Gilgamesh's adventure times with Enkidu, and David's slaying of Goliath, true superhero stories of their time, are remembered today for their insight into how their peoples have viewed themselves and their relation to the wider world. In the case of Moses' Exodus, the relevance of his legendary migration of the Israelite people in some of the world's largest religions cannot be understated. The story of the Exodus has inspired heroes in their own right, like Martin Luther King Jr. Minority religions also revere the role of heroes, like the Ifa religion, which honors the ordinary people who led extraordinary lives by deifying them into Orisha upon their death. More recently, figures like Nani of the Maroons and Agwebana II are venerated by colonized people in the Caribbean for their resistance to colonial conquest. These days, we remember and honor not just mythological figures, great men of history, and national heroes, but also celebrities and entrepreneurs who are elevated and respected for their contributions. Yet there's a dark side to this heroic idolatry. Today I'll be channeling my inner Billy Butcher, for those who get that reference. It's time we had some discourse about the flawed figures that fill our collective consciousness with spectacle and mislead our memory of history. I'm saying it's about time we kill your heroes. Metaphorically, of course. Let's start with celebrities. The rise, fall, and reinventions of the spectacle of celebrity culture has been fascinating to behold, especially since the modern celebrity is indeed a distinctly modern phenomenon. Of course, there were charismatic, talented, and well-known celebrity-like figures throughout human history. There are societies which are intolerant of individual prowess, like the Sand Bushmen who clown talented hunters to keep their egos in check. But across many cultures, you have the chiefs and kings, the aristocrats of heroic societies, the Olympians and gladiators, the poets and politicians, the big men of some gift economies, and the prize hunters of various band societies. Many of these figures leveraged their influence to gain wealth or political power, and definitely had tremendous influence on their communities. But none of them ever reached the status of someone like Michael Jackson. That's not really a fair comparison to make because nobody has. But the global notoriety of non-royal celebrities like Will Smith, Oprah Winfrey, Jackie Chan, Keanu Reeves, LeBron James, and Cristiano Ronaldo has never been reached before the advent of mass media. The power of media, and especially online media, to elevate ordinary people to stardom has only recently become more accessible to the masses. We live in a society, an atomized, individualized society where people are slotted into highly specific roles in the industrial economy. The extreme individualism of modern capitalist societies fosters loneliness and powerlessness among the masses of people, and from this atomized society arises certain exceptional or talented figures, dripping in opulence, to act as aspiration porn on the stage of popular imagination. In Guy Debord's commentary on Society of the Spectacle, he notes that just the fame of celebrities, regardless of how they first made their name, allows them to translate their status into whatever field of the spectacle tickles their fancy. For example, the rappers that end up putting out their own Nikes. The spectacle is the whole autocratic reign of the capitalist market economy, which subordinates people to commodities and commodifies experience itself, draining us of the full, genuine expression of life by replacing truly social relationships with relationships mediated by commodities and identification with commodities. Celebrities are brands. The images they put out are shells of themselves. The lifestyle they live and market to the masses is a compensation for that emptiness. They are commodities themselves. Their individuality has been sacrificed in order to mold them into projections and figureheads of individualist capitalist aspiration. But behind the scenes, They rely on the labor of countless nameless others to keep their performance going. These great men, these heroes of art and athleticism, are used as a diversion of attention from the misery of daily life and the pain that maintains it. Speaking of great men, these days entrepreneurs are venerated as makers of history. They become celebrities in their own right. Just as with the traditional idea of great men of history, these figures are typically white and male. Many were aristocrats, owned slaves, and freely extracted the domestic labor of invisibilized women. Or they are heirs to that legacy of imperial plunder, racialized violence, and domestic exploitation. Popular figures like Musk, Gates, and Bezos push the idea of a self-made genius while sitting in the comfort of their middle or upper-class origins and abundance of unacknowledged privileges. This individualist capitalist society loves to focus on entrepreneurs, and particularly those that beat the odds and manage some social and class mobility in this rigged system, ignoring the inherent survivorship bias of that focus and obscuring the broader social factors like class, land, capital, and privilege that allows the rich to get richer and makes the poor even poorer. The stories of these entrepreneurs who built the modern world always conveniently leave out the actual builders, the nameless workers slaving under these so-called great men. More on that later. National heroes are the last group of great men I want to draw attention to. These pillars of a country's collective consciousness provide the people with persons they can admire and emulate. As contributors to the country's history, these larger-than-life figures, whether martyrs, political leaders, or legendary heroes, are honored through the naming of locations, the elevation of statues, and the reference of their lives by teachers, parents, and politicians. These figures are honored in schools, remembered in communities, or admired in activist circles. We consume incomplete pictures of their lives and legacies and strive to emulate their model, maintain their visions, and continue their legacy. From the revolutionary leadership of Thomas Sankara and Che Guevara, to the founding fathers of the USA and the father of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Eric Williams, these national heroes become idealized echoes of themselves over time, epitomes of the way history is warped by popular perception. However, across nations, centuries, and ideologies, these venerated figures are not without their flaws, shortcomings, mistakes, and blatant transgressions, even those that earnestly pursued liberation. Thomas Sankara established the first locally implemented mass vaccination campaign, elevated the role of women, and helped develop the self-sufficiency of Burkina Faso. Yet his continuation of the coup d'etat political culture, alienation of allies, repressive judicial reforms, and lack of working-class involvement would not only help seal his own fate, but also limit his long-term impact on the country's future. Che Guevara may have helped peasants build health clinics and schools, overseen land redistribution, and collaborated with revolutionaries across Africa and Latin America. But the Cuba he helped establish was still mired by forced labor camps, arbitrary arrests, queer repression, bans on Santeria, and suppression of press freedom. The founding fathers of the settler colonial United States need no introduction, but their evils are often obscured by layers upon layers of mythology and propaganda. The first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Eric Williams, while being the culmination of a centuries-long legacy of black anti-colonial resistance, still suppressed the wave of black power protests sweeping the nation. These great men of history are often commodities that their successors can point to validate their rule, while alienating the dissenters that often learn from, diverge from, and build upon their legacy for a more just world. In case you're wondering why I keep referring to great men with a thin layer of sarcasm, I'm referencing great man theory, developed by Scottish philosopher and essayist Thomas Carlyle. The theory is a 19th century approach to the study of history that explains its events through the impact of great men, highly influential and unique individuals who, owing to their superior intellect, courage, leadership abilities, and divine inspiration, practically decide the outcome of history. As Carlyle writes,
"They were the leaders of men, these great ones, the the modelers, patterns, and in a wide sense creators of whatsoever the general mass of men contrive to do or attain. All things that we see standing accomplished in the world are properly the outer material result, the practical realization and embodiment of thoughts that dwelt in the great men sent into the world. The soul of the whole world's history, it may justly be considered, were the history of these.
One of this theory's most forceful critics was English philosopher Herbert Spencer, who believed that the men Carlyle had called great men were merely products of their social environment. Quote, "Before he can remake his society must make him." Marxist poet Bertolt Brecht had a more artful dissection of the flaws of this mode of historiography.
Who built the 7 gates of Thebes? The books are filled with names of kings. Was it the kings who hauled the craggy blocks of stone? And Babylon, so many times destroyed? Who built the city up each time? In which of Lima's houses, that city glittering with gold, lived those who built it?
Honestly, Bertolt Brecht is a veritable factory for absolutely banger quotes. But I digress. Great man theory disintegrates the moment you account for the perspectives of the masses of ordinary people. Workers, slaves, soldiers, unionists, activists, journalists, artists, and caregivers that these leaders exploited, repressed, and killed, or depended on and profited from, or both. These are the real heroes, living precariously, the ones most forgotten, most victimized, and most ignored, yet most pivotal to the very continuation of economy and society. In his book, A People's History of the United States, Howard Zinn wrote,
"The history of any country, presented as the history of a family, conceals fierce conflicts of interest, sometimes exploding, often repressed, between conquerors and conquered, masters and slaves, capitalists and workers, dominators and dominated, and in such a world of conflict, a world of victims and executioners, it is the job of thinking people, as Albert Camus suggested, to not be on the side of executioners."
all of us are a part of this. All of us are shapers of our communities. We cannot let these heroes make us forget that. We cannot let those in power and those vying for power make us forget that. We must reject their theories of history and perceptions of the present that erase our contributions and invest individuals with disproportionate power. We are the nameless, and we are many. So, let's discuss the contradiction. The named heroes, those revered across time. The nameless masses, those forgotten builders of history. We, the working class, stripped of the fruits of our labor, exploited and suffered under the status quo, yet struggling, some of us, to continue toward the liberation and self-determination of all people. We must uplift the nameless and demonstrate how we can all live and thrive as people. We must learn more about our nameless history and our efforts across time to create change. We must take part in the many possible avenues of resistance, from community organizing to workers' unions to student organizations, to strike back and step forward. Kill your heroes. Metaphorically, of course, because no one can save us but ourselves. Typically, this would be the conclusion. The part of the video where I say, all power to all the people. Peace. Yet I couldn't leave it at that. The reality is that people accustomed to viewing history through the lens of great men look for people like that in real life for guidance. The reality is that in organizing spaces, influential people exist and have the influence. Denying that fact leaves us ill-equipped and unprepared for clashes of egos, unaccountable leaders, and movement hijackings by opportunists. As anarchists, we recognize that the strong rule of individuals stifles self-activity and creates a passive dependence on those figures and organizations. Not to mention, having a body of leaders that make decisions on behalf of the whole, no matter how well-intentioned, reproduces hierarchical and authoritarian relations in our organizations and can only result in a hierarchical and authoritarian society. Means remain ever tied to ends. Rather, we need bottom-up forms of organization in which all members are involved in the decision-making process. The delegation of responsibilities must have feedback mechanisms in place to prevent the concentration of power and keep members accountable to one another and to the goals of the movement. Note that the rejection of that form of leadership of personalities does not mean that we don't recognize people's skills and abilities or the value of delegation and coordination in organization. That's a mouthful. Truth is, social revolution is not easy. It's one thing to have a critique and a vision, but developing and implementing a plan is a whole nother story. When we organize, we meet people where they're at and, through collective action, expand our desire and capacity for liberation. Our organizations must learn to get involved in the long, slow, patient process of building power with people rather than power over people. Part of that process is the recognition of power dynamics in organizing spaces and their relation to systems of oppression. It's not enough to just say we all share power and everyone's equal. No, there needs to be a shift from no leaders to all of us are working to be leaders. Anti-authoritarian leadership development involves openly discussing existing dynamics, identifying the skills and analysis people already have, creating ways to share power and knowledge, providing each other encouragement and opportunities to develop further, and developing a more intentional process that involves learning, responsibility, respect, trust, and accountability. That, I believe, is how we get to all power to all the people. Peace. Special thanks to Nancy's Library, Fab Socialism, and The Storyteller for reading the quotes in this video. Check out their channels linked in the description below. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your fellow peoples. Thanks once again, of course, to the family, including our newest members, Sky, Just Me, Adam M. Smith, and Crouton and Baguette. Join these beautiful humans and support me too on patreon.com/sainttrue. Check out all my other videos for a range of radical topics. Follow me on Twitter @_sainttrue. Thanks again. Peace.